All right, well, hello everyone. Welcome to another episode of the TFTuesday Podcast. My name is Zil. It has been a fucking scorcher and a half outside lately. I am not a fan of it. It is not cash money. I want my fucking hoodie season back. It is goddamn September. What the fuck? I'm joined by my illustrious co-host, k-libra. How you doing, k-libra?
I'm doing pretty good. I think that the weather is going to keep sliding into being kind of cool, which would be nice because then there's like a few things that I have that I always miss wearing. You know, like my cape and everything like that. Oh, but I got clothes from the CNE that I'm just dying to fucking wash and wear.
But Libra, what's the CNE? I'm an American and I don't know what the fuck you're talking about.
I'm so sorry. The fucking Canadian National Exhibition, because it's been introduced that way to me, it's hard to not say CNE to just anybody, and then I'm like, oh, yes. My bad. Yeah, Canadian National Exhibition. It happens every year. It goes on for like 3 weeks. It's like part carnival and international sales and events and a bunch of performances and it's just a ton of shit. And like the weird food is also a centerpiece. Like what I ended up having was a version of the Luther. If people don't know what the Luther is, it got popularized by the Boondocks. It's supposed to be a cheeseburger with like strips of bacon, like a fried egg, cheese, and all this other stuff, but it's between two Krispy Kreme donuts.
My God.
Okay, yes, it is an abomination. And in that episode, there's a whole thing about how people love it. But since then, people have been like, hey, maybe you should try making the Luther. And people have. And what I ended up having was something that was, let's see, it was between two Krispy Kreme donuts. And they had, like, I think pink frosting on the inside to, like, adhere the stuff inside. And there was, like, a blueberry jam with real blueberries and fucking cheesecake bits and with fried chicken. And I had it, and I have to say the flavor was fine, but I felt really, really bad after eating it. But it is a fun thing to be able to tell people that I ate that. Oh my God.
That's true. It's funny because you filmed yourself while you were eating it, and just the immediate reaction on your face as you were eating it told me everything I ever could have needed to know about this fucking monstrosity. So
I'm telling you, it sounds really bad to like put all the ingredients together. And I would have thought that it would have been this horrible cacophony in my mouth, but it was surprisingly kind of boring. And the way I can sum it up to people is, if you've ever had good chicken and waffles, there is like a push and pull between the flavors of savory and sweet. And that's what makes it enjoyable to have chicken and waffles, even with like syrup or whatever like sweetness adjacent to it, or spiciness. There was supposed to be jalapeno on my thing, but it wasn't available, so whatever. But that's what makes good chicken and waffles. That's what makes that kind of experience worth having. And because everything was so fucking overpowering, the sandwich was kind of like, well, I know I ate donuts, cream cheese, and blueberries, and chicken just happened to be there. I don't feel good about this. I do feel good when people subscribe to our Patreon.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I really do appreciate when people decide to lend their support to something like this, because we are making hours and hours of entertainment for people. It's something that I really feel very strongly about. Otherwise, I wouldn't have gotten involved in this show. And I feel like it's good when people really put their money where their mouth is. It also doesn't have to be a lot of money. We appreciate any amount of support people are willing to give.
Yeah, no, it's true. And I will say, I think there's a lot of wonderful benefits that come along with the Patreon that we don't always advertise, be it, the occasional server calls or getting to see our art in various stages or even being created live. I mean, it's pretty cash money.
Also, outtakes. There are outtakes that occasionally get thrown in there and they don't make it to YouTube or anywhere else. But you can find them in there.
Yeah. It's pretty cool. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So I think this is going to be an interesting episode because, we've talked about this in like various ways over, I think, the past little while, but I think there is sometimes a central tension between folks who really, really enjoy just the TF side of things, like the actual changes, and folks who are really invested in like the post TF content of like exploring the world afterwards, et cetera, et cetera. And Libra and I were talking about this, and I thought it would be interesting to kind of have a debate, which is better. And so I think we're gonna get into that a little bit today. I'm going to be arguing in favor of the post-TF side of things, and Libra will be arguing in favor of the TF side of things. But I think it'll be an interesting discussion, debate, what have you. I almost wanted to jokingly call it the like WWE Smackdown version of like.
Oh, are we doing blood sports? Because that would be like blood sports, internet drama. We'll get into the debate sphere. I want to get Vosh back into debating. He'll debate me. I'll go get Destiny. I'm gonna go find Richard Spencer or some shit like that.
Yeah.
Now, all those people are not equitable. I just feel like it was very good between like left, center, and right.
Yes. And then just throw them all in for a Royal Rumble, as it were, which I now know what that is. So,
Oh, man, I would love that. Yeah, Zil now has gotten the taste of why wrestling is amazing. There's nothing like it.
I gotta say, as Bolus was saying in one of our server calls, chat, I was really getting into the whole wrestling thing because Libra showed me some matches and I was like, God damn, there's drama, there's characters, there's action, there's unexpected twists and turns and fake outs and then sudden shocking endings that besmirch the good name of Canada. Mm-hmm. I mean, God, I'm gonna get invested in all of that.
Yeah, man. So. For those that don't know, Canada's. I'm not being a shit about it. Canada is huge when it comes to wrestling. I was in the United States and was realizing, wow, some of the best wrestlers have come out of Canada, period. I would say Canada, specifically Texas, because Texas has had, like, the most famous wrestlers. Shawn Michaels, Undertaker, and Stone Cold Steve Austin are all from fucking Texas, okay? And they all have 3 very distinct flavors, and they all were fucking huge and left their mark on the fucking industry. Then there's all the guys from Canada. Good number of them came from Alberta, by the way. I guess that's the thing you have to do over there. I'm
sensing a connection.
Yeah, Alberta. So like Alberta, Canada, Texas, USA, and of course we got some of the good olds from like fucking like Mexico,
Yeah.
But yeah, wrestling is great. If you're going to trash wrestling and you're a furry, I have news for you, and you can have blood sports with me about it. But we're going to have blood sports about something else, I guess, and you're going to have to learn how to fold that chair up real quick and use it before the ref can catch you.
Yeah, exactly. You got to do it when the ref isn't looking. You got to be sneaky. Or, you can just knock out the ref, because that's totally fine.
Yeah, if you make it look like an accident, otherwise, you get disqualified.
Yeah. Or unless
we don't have a referee
Shamrock.
here.
He doesn't deal with that. But yes, we don't have a referee here, so
we only have public opinion. This is going to be a no disqualification match, false count anywhere. Yes. You don't know what that means. I'm not going to bother explaining it to you right now. Ask me questions later. I'll tell you things about wrestling. So, Zil, tell me, why are you going to bat for this post-TF bullshit?
So I decided to take up the mantle for post-TF and its defense as to why it's superior. Mainly because I think that people who can't get into it are just unimaginative and just don't have enough going for them in their minds, Let's just start out with the insults and the bullshit, But seriously, like, I think one of the things that I really love about post-TF and the narratives around it is there's a lot of intellectual exercises that you have to get into to really like map out creating that kind of a content. You have to think about, how is whatever it is you're becoming, how is that going to navigate this environment? How are you going to grapple with the societal changes that you have undergone in like your relation to other people, be it humans or animals or otherwise? How are you going to try and communicate to other people what's happened to you? Maybe you can, maybe you can't. How are you going to settle into rhythm? What happens afterwards? That quintessential question is like, there's so many different things that stem from that. And you have to do a lot of really interesting thinking around actually taking that and turning it into be it a narrative in a writing story or into an actual, a visual piece or what have you. It's funny. There was a post-TF kind of media that was linked to me recently about a guy who wakes up, who's been isekai'd into Star Trek, but he's also now a dragon, and he doesn't know what Star Trek is. And that's like such a fucking insane like proposition for a story. But I hear that and I go, yeah, I want to know more. Like, what the fuck? How do you even navigate those things? The guy gets through Starfleet, which is, again, hilarious because he doesn't know what the fuck Star Trek is. But, to distill it, I think that there's a lot of really interesting intellectual exercises that you can get into from that perspective. And, I mean, I always like things that get me thinking. And, obviously TF can too, but what happens after? What about the Rammies and the Consies? Like, I want to hear about the Rammies.
Why has everything got a fucking baby name to it? Okay. All right. Yeah, that's all good. I just I'm seeing that like why it's supposed to be better. It really can't exist without the event itself. And I say this because there's a lot of stories that you could realize people have already undergone some kind of change, but suddenly it kind of goes over people's heads just because it didn't have the experience in the first place. I feel like there's a lack of how do I want to put this? It's inconsistent. People want the whole what happens after, but there's a huge focus on the fact that it happened at all. I don't know how people come to terms with that, since the act of the transformation is supposed to be a very remarkable thing in the first place. So I think the post TF thing is not just kind of I don't know about not important. It's just I'm kind of like, who fucking cares? Because I don't understand why people don't realize that there's a lot of stories that already have people who have already become something, but that doesn't count as post TF. It just happens to be part of their background. I don't fucking know. I just think that also the whole thing of somebody changing in front of you is like a huge event in itself, and how it's supposed to shatter your worldview. I think there isn't really a transformation I don't think there's really a transformation that doesn't automatically get coupled with the idea of something happening after. Something always happens after. I think it's a strange fixation that gets sated a lot, and people just kind of want to linger on the new things, which makes it a completely different kind of story, but I guess that's why it has its own label. I mean, I guess if you really want the post-TF, maybe the fucking TF doesn't actually matter to you at all. Why not just read anything about anybody else? Oh, because you want to include yourself. You want to be able to put yourself in the mindset of a scenario, of a world that could allow such a thing to happen, that maybe that could be you, which would mean nothing if it wasn't for transformation itself being a colossal event. And so why gloss over it or push past it so readily? Like, it doesn't really matter, but come on. Yeah, Dungeon Meshi is also like a big post-TF story as well. Nobody refers to it that way, though.
That's true. Well, okay, but I want to pick up on something, because I understand the smack talk around the post-TF. I understand that, but I'm not hearing as much of an argument as to why just TF itself is superior to the other. Because, yes, they obviously have a connection to each other. Like, every post-TF has to result from a TF, and every TF is going to have a resulting post-TF. So, there's, the symbiosis there that's, always going to be there. But when it comes to actually, the experience of telling a story or, through a visual media or whatever, I understand that there's, a spectacle to transformation, as it were, the body changing, whatever. Obviously I'm into that, but it's very much just a contained event, obviously there's some where it's more drawn out and whatever, but what about the fact that it's just a one-time thing? Like, there's so much that happens afterwards that you can continue to tell stories in that space, like, almost forever. Like, there's just so many infinite possibilities. So I don't understand how then TF is supposed to be superior to post-TF, you know?
I think that there's just so many ways to actually explore the process itself. I mean, people like the ring things. There's technically no process in that, but it is a fun idea to just play with, to just mess with that in a bunch of different ways. What order, and what by what means. Thinking around how you want that stuff to look is also kind of fucking innumerable. You can get ultra abstract with it if you want, and I kind of think it's better in a way because it's also more digestible. I think when you want to write a whole post anything story, there's so much shit that just kind of can lose the plot, or maybe it doesn't really want to be like, you can really appreciate what's going on if you're watching someone change, but like I said before, there's stories where people have been a thing and then they changed, and then nobody calls that a post-TF story, and that's kind of weird, and it makes me feel like they're not really looking for like that. It's like the transformation doesn't matter, and therefore it can just be like pushed aside. But if you want transformation, look at the experience of what it is like to actually see person A go to form B or even C. There's like also those other things where there's like a few projects I've seen of people do where it's like, oh yeah, I think it was like Strawberry TF. So it starts like a donation thing. Oh, where am I going to go? What's going to be added to me? And that's just like, oh, that's cool. It makes me wonder what's going to happen next. It's a story in itself, and I like that you can also express a lot with it, because what if it's like, if it is painful, why is it painful? Is it the culmination of something? If it's a punishment, then like that's the end of the story maybe, and that's contained within the transformation itself, and it can be pretty easy to either understand what the point of it is, or at least come to a conclusion.
Yeah, so picking up on what you're saying, I do agree that one of the really interesting central things about transformation is that element of like not knowing what exactly is going to happen next, the order of how things are going to happen, and like the ways in which you can depict it are always going to vary and such. But at the same time, I have to wonder, because when you are putting a character, for example, through those changes, and then they have to grapple with the aftermath, like, there's always something within a transformation that leaves the viewer wanting. And I think the draw towards post-transformation is, yes, there's something that you've been left wanting. Here it is. Here is the thing that you were left having, like whatever questions you had, or potential for like further exploration, here it is in the post-TF. Whereas like transformations are always going to leave you with certain questions, whereas the post-TF has the opportunity to actually give you all the answers. And I wonder if, when folks are less big on post-TF, if it's that, I guess, uncertainty that people really enjoy as well, versus, no, I actually want to answer all the questions, and I want to really understand how the mechanics of this work, because I'm someone who likes world building or what have you.
I mean, that's fine, but do you really need answers to every fucking question? You want them, fine, but if people inherently think that something is lacking because they don't tell you what the fuck happens afterward, that's not how all stories work anyway. There are things that I like to call healthy questions. When I say healthy questions, it is in the vein of, incidentally, well, what happens next? That will keep you going, that maintains your interest, unlike an unhealthy question from media, which is, what did I just see? I don't understand it. Why did they do this? Those are not very healthy questions, and people can understand the context of why I'm saying that, I hope. But yeah, I just don't really see the point in really wanting that to happen. And besides, like, I got a question for you. Would it still be a post-TF story if somebody changed and then that phenomenon never happened again?
Like the phenomena of changing?
Yeah. What if they changed and they changed back and it never happened again? What if it never happened again to anybody ever in the history of the rest of the existence? Would that
Okay,
still be a
so
post-TF story?
so that's an interesting question. I'm gonna have to ask another question back though. How long is the duration between? Is it like I changed and then I change back, or
it could be anything. It's
so it
like
can be anything?
okay, like I'll give you the instance of an ant becoming aware that it is an ant, and then going back to being only an ant, having held all of that stuff. That's like your eldritch horror, cosmic horror type of thing.
Yes.
An uneasy awareness of your existence and your magnitude in the universe, which is nothing. And then there's like the big long-term thing, like maybe you have been trapped in a form for months or years, let's say fucking years, and then you're like, wow, I lived as a fucking barn owl, and I don't know how I got back, but yeah, I was able to put my life together.
I mean, I think that's definitely a post-TF story still, because, yeah, maybe that set of changes is never going to happen to anyone else, but particularly if the story is being told through the lens of a person, I mean, that impact's going to stay with them forever, and there's a lot of philosophical questions that you can dive into, especially, like, you know, to use that example of, you know, maybe you were something for X amount of time and then you'll turn back again later, and it's like, how do you adapt again? Like, that's almost two post-TF stories slapped onto one. There's two changes and there's two post-TFs, and I think that, like, both of those things would still qualify in the grand scheme of things. And in fact, I think a lot of, like, post-TF media, if it becomes like a more of like a long-running thing, I often find that, like, folks feel the need to, like, throw in additional changes to keep it kind of interesting, be it like maybe the character has like a drive to change back and that's their end goal, or maybe they change in a way they didn't really want and then they want to actually change a bit more.
Then that's a different kind of story, and then you're just kind of looking for more excuses to change, which makes me wonder what the fuck is the point of the post part anyway.
I mean,
that's
I don't know if that's true though. I don't know if that's true.
But that's a yearning for more change. It's that would make it a story about seeking change, not really grappling with the consequences of it. That's a different kind of story.
But isn't
with the premise that has been set.
Isn't searching for more change also a way that someone could be coping with the consequences? I mean, think about it. Like, let's say, you know, go back to the barn owl example. Okay, you've turned into a barn owl. You're trying to figure shit out now that you're a barn owl because you don't know how the fuck to fly or whatever the fuck. And you also want to become a human again because that was what you always wanted to be, and you weren't a TF fan, which, whatever, like, skill issue. So you're going about trying to find a way to turn back while also adjusting to your new form. I think that's still a post-TF story.
It could be, but we're going with the premise of what happens after.
Yes.
And, I mean, would you agree that with what happens after is generally what life is like when you're that creature, not necessarily if you ever change back? Because that's the implication I get from a lot of people. Now that you've become this, I'm dying to know what the rest of their life is like, which makes me wonder, if this was entertaining for you, if this transformation was entertaining for you, why are you dogging me for the rest of it? Just think of the rest of the shit yourself. And you got a pretty good kick out of what you just saw, and thinking like, wow, what was it like to experience that? I think transformation alone is something to just marvel at when you fucking see it.
Of course. And I mean, again, I think, like, we both enjoy transformation, to be clear, but, you know, for the sake of this
we don't. We clearly don't enjoy the same things at all.
I mean, that's
why
true.
I don't understand you at all.
Jesus. I know, I am pool toy Jesus, so, like, you know, it's a little bit difficult to understand my
perspective. And I'm a non-believer.
But no, to give you, I think, a good example of, like, what I would think about when I think about, like, post transformation narrative. Again, combining both. Like, if you have someone who turns into, we'll go with a pool toy because I'm on that kick right now. Let's say you're talking about someone turning into a pool toy, and you have your story where you talk about, like, the actual changes and all that good stuff, whatever. And then you start getting into what happens afterwards. What are they feeling? Whatever. I think that something that post-TF can explore, which is not really explored in the same way when it comes to transformation, is the long-term grappling from like a mental state perspective, and in particular if there's like extended mental changes to someone, like as they are continuing to remain in this form. So like, if you've turned into a pool toy, and it's like the longer you're a pool toy, the more pool toy brained you are. Like there's a lot of interesting things that you can talk about in terms of like, how does your like perception of the world gradually shift, and like how do you come to terms with like the fact that you can't move on your own, and that like you cycle through life based on like the seasons, and in particular when it's summer out, or maybe you get like taken around on travel because whoever owns you now wants to bring you to the fucking beach or something when they go on travel.
That's fun and all, but holy shit, that's a lot. That's a lot.
It is a lot. It's absolutely a lot.
Well, shorter things can be nice too, and can also stimulate your brain. And I'm just thinking it's good also that a well-made scene that gets you from point A to point B or captures a moment will have something for you to take away and just keep in your mind, rather than having to spend many hours crafting and just trying to get people to understand your point of view, which is kind of like, wow, Libra, I thought you said you like art, and art is a form of communication. Yes, it is, but also it doesn't always have to be that way. And when it comes to the post-TF stuff, when it gets brought up, it always comes off to me as a way that people just sort of express feeling shortchanged. Like, this would be really, really good if I had a very vivid explanation of how life was for them after. Like, come on, man. Like, if that's something you're looking for, then sure, there's a bunch of it already. And I'm not really sure if people even know what they are looking for when they do that. I think you bring up good points with the with like how people can grapple with things by searching for more change. That was a good point. You like, what if they keep looking for change? Yeah, why not? I think a lot of people would yearn to go back to something if they lost it and also liked it, or they felt genuinely fulfilled. Except, does everything really need to be an 80-hour adventure?
Well, it doesn't, but that's the thing. So I'm going to ask you this question. Do you feel like when we talk about post-TF media, do you feel like that's really only encapsulated by like the long-term running like 80-plus hour media, as it were? Because I feel like post-TF can also be short media too. It doesn't have to be a super long extended thing.
It absolutely can be, but often that's not what's put forward when people say that. Because again, that shit gets overlooked all the time whenever there's a story like, oh, so-and-so was a thing. But then what's kind of funny is I think in a number of stories, people may be disappointed that they don't get to see it happen. They're like, oh, they just went right to the other form. Oh, boo. Well, but you get the thing that happens afterward. Or does that not really matter to you? Do you even really need the transformation part sometimes? Like, I don't know. It's a weird thing to talk about in terms of which is better. I just think that simple is good, and since I am playing by the rules of this, I think I'm just going with that angle. It's simple, it's good, and a transformation also can span a very long story too. There are lots of people who like the slow burn. Yes. The Fly is an entire movie where that's just the whole thing for an hour and a half. The fucking like Even Species is kind of like that too. Even though she changes back and forth, there is like, she goes from like scared little girl to like, oh, now she's a predator, a real predator, and that that progresses throughout the movie too. She doesn't just flatly get like, okay, monster here. Like, she gets better at it. Like her fucking alien form shows off more and more.
Yeah,
all that kind of stuff. Or like Parasite Eve. That's a post-TF story too.
That is a post-TF story. But then, so yes, I agree that TF obviously can also be long-spanning media and can, explore a lot of things as the changes are still happening. just like post TF can be shorter pieces of work. But here's the thing I wonder about. So yes, there's definitely people who are like, oh, it was a poof TF or whatever, we didn't really get to see it, whatever, etc. But I wonder if, like, some of the points you've made, I wonder if that is more focused on the fact that people sometimes are asking about the stuff that happens after for your stuff versus the medium as a whole. What do you think about that?
I think the medium as a whole lacks a lot because it's not easy to just write a story that with a character that you can connect with on a level such as I was a different thing and this affected my life. I feel like a lot of people come at it from the wrong angle. It's in order for something like that to matter, you have to be able to relate to people, and I feel like a lot of post TF content is about pushing people as far away from what they consider human as possible as part of the appeal, which could be fun, but which is fun on paper and doable, but there's like an inherent rejection to it. It comes off as a way, largely, to me, from what I've seen, no, I haven't read every single CYOC story, as a way to cement why being a human being sucks and I wish I wasn't one. And, like, although that can be a thing that you can work with in any story and shit like that, you're also trying to sell it. And like, hell, man, that's kind of hard to sell because we're all human beings. Yes, we are, and we have to be able to communicate with each other. Not to mention, transformation in general is supposed to be a great tool for helping to simplify a message into something that's more palatable. And with the post TF stuff, it's really just not about that. I think that's a flaw with how a lot of people look at it. And I mean, it's really hard to mistake, oh, this is a change that's making them feel things. Is it scary? Are they feeling better about it as it progresses? You know, it's like a good transformation is indeed like a good sex scene. And I will explain it to you like this. People can poo-poo sex scenes as being just stuff for the audience. But sex scenes have a purpose for character development. It is supposed to be a moment where either people like finally get together, or maybe people discover things about themselves. I think Alfie by Incase is a great example of that. Every single sex scene is a character building moment. All right? Every single one is about like, oh, I didn't know I could be this way. Oh, why did I act this way before when I really find that I like this? Or, man, I was stuck in this situation, but you know what? This ain't bad. Or, man, I really tried this and this isn't me. All kinds of shit like that. Even like, even Handmaid's Tale. That show is fucking brutal. And you have to watch a lot of rape. And maybe people would be thinking, why should they have sex scenes in that show? Number one, it's meant to make you uncomfortable. And number two, even though you see a bunch of them, there's a different thing going on in each of those. Each of those is like a character building moment. So that, number one, it's never dull, and number two, it's never pointless. It's never just there to make you feel bad or to shock you into being like, do you see how horrible the world is? There is a point to it. Sometimes there's actually high points that come out of it that you're like, whoa, didn't expect that. And you'd have to watch the show to understand why the fuck I would even say such a thing. And hell, also because of those scenes, there are good sex scenes. There's about love and enjoyment and stuff like that, and it's a good contrast. So like transformation, you can have those things kind of happen. Are you learning to like it? Are you finding a bit of yourself that you didn't know you enjoy? Is it painful but something you're worth that you find worth enduring in order to meet another goal? Those things can be condensed in like just a very short scene too. It doesn't always have to be the slow burn like The Fly. And when you do the post TF thing, how long are you really going to ruminate over the I'm not human anymore part? It's just going to become business as usual. If it's not business as usual, then I think you have another fucking situation on your hand that makes me kind of pull away. Like, wow, you haven't gotten used to this after like 5 years?
Okay, so two things. So I want to come back to this bit that you just said, but I also want to address something else you said earlier. So you said that with post TF, you get the vibe that like the gist is you want to get as far away from like being human, humanity, whatever as possible as part of the narrative, which I'm not disagreeing about. But I would argue that that's the same case with transformation as well, and that through both mediums you can actually talk about finding humanity at the end of the day, although I would argue you can find it better with post-TF. So I wanted to make sure I said that part first. But the second part, which now I've actually forgotten because I got wrapped up in that, the second part was about... Sorry, could you repeat it? The last part of what you said.
Like a good sex scene?
No, there was something you said after that, I thought.
Oh. I can't remember exactly what you might be picking on.
I'll go back to the sex scene then, because I see the connection and such of like making that relation. It makes sense to me. But like, yes, you have your wonderful sex scene, but you also then have to go on with your life afterwards. And maybe if, the point of the sex scene was, oh, these two people got together, well, who wouldn't want to explore their lives together afterwards if that's what ends up happening? Maybe they're not going to get together. Maybe there's going to be a curveball or whatever. You're not going to know that if you just watch the sex scene, right? You'll never know what the possibilities are. And I understand about the open questions. I really do. Sometimes, you don't need to get into the post-TF. I firmly believe in that. Some stories are better left without the post-TF. But as a medium, when it comes to, post-TF and like investigating these questions, I feel like there is a constant push and pull between what are you going to do and how are you going to navigate it, combined with also having to grapple with this new body. And you're right. Like, I remember now what it was. You're right in that for a lot of these stories, potentially, like if you're bemoaning, oh, I don't know how my wings work, like a year and a half into your life as a bird, you probably have bigger issues to deal with at that point than whatever the fuck else is going on. So I do agree, like, if that ends up being the case, obviously that's unrealistic. But I think that a lot of people who actually explore that space don't necessarily do that. It's more about, like, yes, we're checking in. Maybe let's use, like, a checking in metaphor for a second. Like, okay, the first few days afterwards, you've got these problems. 4 months afterwards, you've probably solved those problems. There's other, like, lesser priority items that you're now navigating with. Let's check in again maybe a year from now. Okay, maybe you've dealt with all those problems, but you're dealing now with the ennui you're feeling for, like, being human, or, like, those feelings are still not really resolved. Maybe, I mean, again, depending on the narrative, maybe you're, like, doing something now to try and, like, cope with that. I think that a lot of people, when it comes to, like, post-transformation, and in particular, like, when we think about, like, the mental states of people, I mean, in many ways, it's almost like if you didn't want the change and you've been stuck like that for, like, over a year or something, it almost becomes a narrative exploring depression if you think about it, because it's like, fuck, right, man, I'm fucking bummed out by this shit. I didn't want this shit. Now I'm stuck in it. How the fuck am I going to deal with that? And you can kind of use it as a tool to, like, explore those topics in a way that's, like, got a bit of distance maybe from your own issues that you're working through. I'm not saying that's something that all the post-TF writers are doing. I'm just using this as, like, an example, to be clear, of, like, things you could be doing at that point.
Yeah, I just want to be very real, because I think we also need to understand what angle we're coming at this discussion from. Mm-hmm. As far as it goes, I said a little bit ago, it's difficult to argue which is better, because these are concepts and both of them have their shortcomings, and I would never be the one to just up and say, like, oh, you're one of those people who enjoys this inferior, like, form of storytelling. Yeah.
I mean, we're having fun with it, obviously.
But within the rules of this, I want to say that the perspective I'm coming at from this, it has everything to do with this niche, this fandom, which looks at this term. This term comes out of this fandom for, like, very specific reason, and it has everything to do with focusing on, like, I was human, I am no longer human, and fixating on that.
Yes.
Which can be fine, but I know that a lot of it is focused into a very particular, like, it's the experience of like inhumanity. It doesn't really explore like it does, a lot of the times that shit isn't really meant to not made to explore those sort of things. I know we have more recent work that has, very easy for transness. That's very easy to express with transformation. But for like the human experience to like get across like certain kinds of emotions and make that connection back to you as the person, that's not really the point. And that's not really the point that I get out of most of it. Because, like, it's really like Wag's eyebrows, like, oh, it must be really weird to have that tail that knocks into everything, right? And, like, okay, fine.
Yes.
Why the fuck do I need to care? It's very much for you, but you can show somebody turning into somebody, and people can be like, I get that. That's really cool. Oh, that looks like it's painful, or like, wow, they're like enjoying that, but it looks so weird. And then you can get into something with that, stimulate something. But when I'm talking about post TF, and I know I've brought up other examples of media that you could have and that you could slap this label on, that's not what we're fucking coming at. That's like, can we agree on that? We're like establishing the definition of words here. What do you mean by underage? Okay. What exactly is that? Did you know that in this country?
I understand what you're saying and the importance for definitions. So let me be clear about what I am defining. Because, yes, I understand that within the realm of these conversations, post-TF often gets a certain rap, so to speak, as to what does it mean. I think generally what you have been describing, and it's not that it's incorrect because there's definitely truth to it. What you've been describing is something I think a lot of people within transformation spaces think about when it comes to post-transformation. So be it I'm going to use an example, not referencing anything specific here. Okay, I have been transformed into a feral, I've been turned into a feral fox because I'm wearing a foxtail right now. So let's go with that. So I've turned into a feral fox. And now the story is focused on, how am I grappling with, like, my new senses and, like, am I going to start, like, having these instincts? Am I going to mate with something or have kits or whatever or blah, 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 et cetera, 50 chapters about that. I think that's what you're thinking about specifically when it comes to post-TF. And I'm not saying that's not necessarily off base, but in my opinion, when we talk about post-transformation, I think it's a bit broader than that. And I have seen examples of that within the fandom, maybe not the ones that get trumpeted about as much. But the one thing I want to focus on in particular when it comes to like what I'm defining as post-transformation here, when it comes to fiction, is like when you have this transformation has happened or whatever, and like you were talking about like how long can you even like go on about these things? Like, are you going to be fixating on these things like X amount of time in the future, whatever? I think post-TF can also include like you are now in this new form, and now there is an actual story that is happening to you in part because you are that form, but not necessarily directly always related to, oh, I'm experiencing these senses for like 50 chapters. Like, I think there's something interesting that can be mined from that, and I think that still absolutely counts as post-TF. So, like, for example, let's say you get transformed into a dragon, and you have, like, a bunch of fucking magic or whatever, and you're horde and whatever the fuck. And, like, yeah, you're getting used to, like, being able to breathe fire and all that shit. But now you have the opportunity, because you're a dragon, to start a cult. You can get people to worship you. You can be a fucking god to them. You have all these fucking powers. Why the fuck wouldn't you use it? You can tell a perfectly interesting story around that, and I think that absolutely counts as post-TF, and it may have new characters in it, there's stakes,
I know
like
it counts.
You're doing subterfuge, whatever. No, but I'm saying I think it should count as part of the definition, too.
It does
and I think
count.
there is an audience for that.
There is an audience, and I don't disagree with that. My problem is knowing that, again, this is the angle we get presented at. It's like when I say transform, it's like you said, like, oh, it's poof TF. People will fucking turn their noses up at that. And like, fine, I know you want to see it. I want to see it too. I paint it all the time. Yes, I really want to see it. I want to feel it. I want to look at it. I want to touch it. All that kind of stuff. Fine. Yeah. But also, like, chill the fuck out, dude. I know what people mean when they say transformation, and they don't often mean like ring, which has no process. generally has no process. But it is a thing, and it's something that skirts the line because you still get to see something happen. And it's fun. It's like visually stimulating. But like all the stuff you said, yes, is completely valid. It's the angle that people come at. It's I think it's like the escapism is number one with what bleeds through when people mention it to me.
Yeah.
Like it's the escapism, and to like a secondary degree, it's the sexualization of it. Yes, it is. And I can understand why in some cases, but yeah, I feel like it's a very insular thing. I think that post TF, as most people will bring it up, is something that is really for like a narrow group of people, which is fine, but can you really show that to most people and like get the same reaction that you want out of it? Are you communicating the things that you want to communicate? I don't know. It's definitely more complex, and if you can show a transformation, if you can show the scene, the process, or whatever little catalyst, just the events of it, I should say. The events. If you can show off the events, that can be fun. And a lot of people can just get it and be on board with what you're trying to execute. But post-TF, I'm going to stick to this. You're talking about a group of people who created this label to emphasize their interest as to they like transformation, but also this particular aspect. Nobody calls Spider-Man a post-TF story, because that is. Kid gets bit by a spider. His body is better than it's ever going to be. He can stick to fucking walls. He can sense the future in like small measures. He doesn't need glasses anymore. Like, you're not human anymore, but nobody talks about it that way. Which is why I have to like really stick to the fact that, yes, all the stuff you said is completely valid, but that isn't really what we're talking about. And that's why I feel like people get lost in the weeds about it.
So I understand that. However, I think that to actually have to actually kickstart a label or whatever, it always has to start somewhere before you can broaden it. And I'm not saying that like, the movement, there's a movement of like people being like, post-TF, we're gonna call the things that are post-TF, post-TF,
it just happened. I know it's not a movement. I just know that it's a very understandable label. And so it's just easy, and it's easy to use. So like, why the fuck not? I don't need to get into that specifically.
But like, I want to bring up another example, because this is definitely a post-TF story, and it's not usually called that, but it is. So I think one of the most famous post-TF stories I can think of is Franz Kafka's Metamorphosis. Dude wakes up as a fucking cockroach, and he's like, holy shit, what the fuck? I'm a fucking cockroach, and I also need to go to my job. And like, that is a story that talks about a lot of different societal issues and touches on a lot of different things. And my question back to you is, do you think having a transformation described as part of that story would have enhanced it? Because I would argue it wouldn't.
That's because that wasn't the point of the story.
Yes.
But again, this is talking about a lot of things that are not what people aim to do with this.
I know, but I reject your definition. That's what I'm saying. I reject your narrow definition of post-TF. I'm defending something that's larger than that.
I am not. I'm saying in the scope of what we're talking about. That is because that's what annoys me, and you know it. Don't fuck with me on this. You know what I'm talking about.
What are you talking about? I am talking
about. I explained this to you already. Do I have to explain it again?
You're talking about the narrow group of people, but I'm saying I disagree. I think that when I'm sitting here defending post-TF and saying it's better, what I'm saying is a broader definition than what you're presenting. That's what I'm saying.
And yet, I am rarely met with people who use it that way.
Well,
I mean, hey, look, man, I was made very aware of a certain story that was supposed to have very clear social commentary, and in the end, I was left confused and angry.
Wow, I wonder what story this could be.
Yeah, you fucking hack.
Sign up to our Patreon to find out who we're talking about. No, but seriously, like, yes, I agree, and it's funny though that That's a TF story. That what you're talking about? That's a TF story. That's not a post TF story.
That was
a post TF story.
It's not. No, I mean, I guess you could say that.
It's not. The changes happen throughout until you've got gallons of cum.
I'm sorry. I guess somebody started off as a dumb dog brain motherfucker to begin with, so it was hard to picture a human to start with. You think that I can fucking connect with that kind of human being? That ain't a fucking human. That's always been a dog brain motherfucker. And I'm sorry to dogs. I love dogs.
I know. That's a pretty mean brush you're painting dogs with. Like, arf, arf, okay? Come on.
Yeah. But I am getting at the very distinct mission to put yourself in a position that is anything other than human, and that seems to be the focus. You're not human. This is what it's like, which could tell things, but really isn't the point.
Okay.
Let me
posit something to you. Okay. Let's say that tomorrow I woke up and I was a Lombax. For argument's sake. Let's just say that happened to me.
Okay.
I would absolutely want to read a story about what happens in that, regardless of if I'm grappling about having fucking sensitive ears or some fucking weird sexual shit or whatever, versus just actually dealing with, like, the stuff I have to deal with in my life. Like, I think that there's a decent number of people who would find that interesting, and I would be really invested. I mean,
see, that is what I'm talking about, and that is fine. But if we're going to talk about what's better, that is for this group of people. And I think that transformation has a broad appeal that can be tapped into when you make a good scene out of it.
I see what you're saying. So what you're arguing, if I can relay your argument back to you, what you're saying is transformation is better because there's a wider audience for it.
I think that there is more possibility for communicating with people, and it also has just as broad a fucking spread for you to be able to express different things and even get a message across.
Okay. So I take your point.
And however, you can do it with less. With less.
Okay. All right. I understand. I see where you're coming from. However, I'm going to bring back actually something you said earlier and, take from this what you will. I would argue that you can access just as big an audience with post-TF. It just might not end up being explicitly called that. You mentioned Spider-Man, for example. A lot of that is an exploration of post-TF, but it's not called that, like you said. It's still accessing a wide audience, though.
It is, and yet this is why I felt the need to really help you and the listener understand where I'm arguing from.
No, yeah.
Again, post-TF is fucking everywhere, but then a lot of people don't consider many things transformation to begin with.
Yes.
So that is where my points. This is how my opinions are formed and informed, even because this whole post TF thing comes out of a really like a particular group of things, and it doesn't get included in things that have been mentioned, like you said with the Dragon's Horde, and then like your life after. And then you're just talking about a story about a dragon. Not so much that they were a person. It is post TF, but again, that's not the story.
But the fact that they were a person means that they can manipulate someone better, for example. So, like, if I'm trying to start a cult, well, I know how humans fucking work. A dragon normally wouldn't have that information. So I can actually think about starting a cult. Obviously I know a lot about starting cults, so that's part of what I'm trying to get at here.
Well, me too, and I'm just telling you that sometimes you need something that's flashy and actually gets attention rather than just some wordy thing about why your fucking wings feel weird that day. Oh, I flew too much and I'm not used to it. Maybe dragons should be flying this long. And that's fine, but it also feels very surface level. And that's surface level to me because I'm not that interested in it, but I know many people are, so that's fine. But that's the angle that I'm going with. Right. I feel like if you want people to really want to make it, like what are you trying to connect with people on? The fact that you're like not human. Lots of people don't want to like be a thing or want to take a fucking break from something. Just like I know that is not the case for most of this stuff that we even started this discussion on.
Yes.
Because again, it's not Spider-Man. Like fucking, it's
But
not.
it counts.
Huh?
But it counts.
It counts with taking it to its logical conclusion. But that's not what people are talking about.
But
When
as you also said earlier,
people want Post TF to be Man Spider, not Spider Man. What happens to Man Spider after is what those people would care about, not what happens to Spider Man.
But as you said, people are also narrow with the definition of transformation sometimes, and we push back on that too. So I'm just being consistent here. I'm pushing back on both definitions.
Dude, I mean, if I went to go tell somebody, like, hey, how do you feel about the post-TF aspect of Spider-Man? They'll be like, what?
Yeah, but they'd think about it for 5 seconds. They'd be like, oh, interesting point, yes.
Explain TF is what I'd have to explain, and then get into that.
I mean, yes, true.
You see, you have to be able to look at this from like a
just because you have to explain something first doesn't mean that it's then therefore better. I'm just saying, like, you know.
Well, dude, I mean, this is kind of like the other thing. It's made for a very specific kind of people. And I think that's fine, except it doesn't captivate me in general. Why should I feel motivated to build on more? Why are the questions not healthy enough for you?
If I can flip something back to, I think your central argument as to why transformation is better is that you can access a greater audience of people. My argument is that the quality of what can be investigated in the post-TF is better. I think we're arguing too, like, but do you see how, like, those things can actually both be true at the same time? Like, I think we're arguing past each other a little bit here.
I do, but again, that also comes down to the perspective. I agree with what you're saying, but I'm trying to tell you the argument that the place that I'm arguing from, and that's not what we're really touching on.
Okay, then let me just say this. I think that the idea that transformation is better because it can access a better audience is incorrect. Fundamentally, I think it's incorrect. It's not the right way to evaluate why something would be better or not. So I'd encourage you to explain why you think that makes it better.
Then what's the point?
What do you mean, what's the point?
What is the point? Like you said that post-TF is better because it can express a bunch of different things and give you like a certain kind of experience and just kind of like simplify themes and make it digestible to people, right?
I didn't say the part about digestible to people. But
well, I'm asking you, well, I mean, come on, man. The whole let me give you a central thesis baked into this too.
Okay, then let me give you a central thesis for post-TF. In my opinion, art, as we've said before on this podcast, art is fundamentally a selfish pursuit. You should create what you want. And what I'm trying to say is, regardless of the audience that you're going to be accessing when you're creating a post-transformation piece, from an intellectual perspective, there is more to mine there, and therefore there is a greater potential for the person creating it to get stuff back out. From that criteria, I would argue it is superior.
Okay. Then why is it that there are paintings that are single scenes that have huge cultural impact on people and can tell a story with one scene? There's a lot of art that you can find in a museum. You can stand there, you can look at it, you can find all the little bits about implicit meanings and sometimes explicit, and that does a hell of a lot of work. Why would I need to be sold on the fact that the painting doesn't tell me how everything turned out when, like, I don't know, I forget what the one. Who's the one that's like the god eating like the Titan eating the sun? It's like Saturn feasting on the sun or some shit like that. Yeah, like, well, man, you know, I really like this sculpture, and the premise seems really captivating, but holy shit, dude, this would have been so much better if I would have known how he felt after he ate him. You know? Okay.
I'm gonna throw something back at you then. You know, of course, about the myth of what's his name? Actaeon, the Greek guy who saw what's her face? I think it's Diana she was like bathing or whatever, and he saw her naked, and it was like a whole thing, and she was like, you better not say shit to anyone or I'll turn you into a deer. And then he like cried out to his friends, and then she turned him into a fucking deer, and he gets ripped apart by his own hounds. Right? A lot of the art about that does not show the transformation itself. In fact, most of them are focused on what happens after. Primarily, him getting ripped apart by his fucking hounds. Now, it's not a big, long, dramatic thing. It's a direct consequence of something that happened. But you can't tell me that's not a post-TF art piece, because there's no changing depicted there. He's getting fucking ripped apart.
Okay, I am going back. We are going in circles. We are arguing past each other. I agree with you on that, and you can't make me get off my point by saying something that I agree with, while also
I can try.
While also not acknowledging what I am trying to say about this very specific thing. No, we keep, like, I know, and I agree, and how the fuck else are you going to tell that cool story if somebody didn't turn into something because it's part of, like, an overarching thing? That's the other thing. The post-TF really has less to do with, like, the before and after, and, like the beginning, middle, and end of it. You know, like, that's not what it is either. So, like, I like that, and that brings the story together, but the whole post-TF thing implies that's the focus. That's the appeal. Yes. The appeal is what happens after. Like, you can ignore the shit that came before. For the most part. You can throw the character away for the most part. Yes,
I disagree.
That is what many people do, and I told you this is the position that I am arguing from, and it's not a good thing to do, and there's plenty of media that does it well, and you have explained many fucking reasons and many examples, but that's not the position I'm arguing from, because I have read and looked at my own shit, and I'm kind of wondering to myself, why the fuck do people keep wanting this? Because I can't relate to it, but oh well, I'm just stumbling across it, so I don't need to go on a crusade about it, and this is why I get annoyed. So you keep bringing up shit, and I know that you're fucking right about it, but that's not what I'm talking about, and you know it.
Okay, I recognize that we are arguing in circles, so I guess to kind of summarize or
this
bring
is
this
fun,
to
though.
In some way. It is fun. I love doing this shit. Like, we get to yell at each other. It's fun. I do think that, like, at the end of the day, I think your hang-ups with post-TF, I understand where you're coming from. To be clear, I understand where you're coming from. I respect it. It's not something that you have central interest in, so it's difficult to comprehend, I think, like, what it is I'm trying to fucking say, and I get that. I genuinely do. And I also understand that, like, the main way in which this is presented is, at its core, unappealing to you, because it's often also being, like, thrown at you after you've made something, like, this is going to be a sequence, what happens afterwards? You know, that fucking bullshit, which, like, yeah, that's fucking...
Yes, I'm going to be very fucking clear. I am very aware of my biases, but they are not uninformed. I'm not just simply annoyed. I have looked into this stuff. I have seen what people have like been yearning for and looking for, and they want more and more of it. And I keep thinking to myself, you know, like, holy shit, how much could you possibly want out of the experience? How many different ways do you want it told? I want something different, damn it. I don't want to get hung up on the one story.
Yeah, no, I get that. And I understand that position. I just fundamentally, I think when I think about my attraction to post-TF, it's less about, I want more things to be a sequence, or I want more images to flip through on fucking transfer. It's more about finding intellectual exercises, and I think that's just fundamentally at odds with how we're both approaching some of these labels. So
I agree. It's just not it just is not used as an intellectual exercise most of the time, which is what I find fucking infuriating about it.
I think we will agree to disagree, and we'll bring this debate to a close, because I don't think we're going to get any further in making progress. The only thing I can
prove is that the Cheesecake Factory makes bad cheesecake, okay?
You fuck off. You fuck off right the fuck now. You know that's because of Queens, and you didn't fucking listen to me when I told you not to, okay?
You know, if you write
we're gonna have this argument on
character to turn into a very lovely dragon, a very sweet, savory dragon that's supposed to have a nice, dense heft to it, and it's nicely textured, and it tastes so good when it's in your mouth, but instead you're kind of like, man, there's nothing to this. I guess I had to order the Aqua Crystal Dragon, didn't I?
Yeah, you fucking did. And then
Fucking
you could experience
asshole.
what it was like to be an Aqua Crystal Dragon afterwards and really dig into what that means.
I think that shallow-ass motherfuckers are just kind of like, yes, let me just... that's not really important. I just need to know what it's like to be a dragon now. Ooh, an Aqua Crystal Dragon.
Yes,
Actually,
an
that
Aqua
does sound
Crystal
kinda
Dragon.
cool, by the way, just thinking, because I like
Yeah, it
crystal
does.
shit. But anyway...
Yeah,
Okay,
and that's why
yes,
you don't get
yes.
the basic cheesecake at the Cheesecake Factory.
And
You don't go in Queens. You have to go somewhere that's not Queens.
And you don't go to Fur Affinity for a good post-CF story. Buzzing!
Oh my god. Where'd you go, CYOC?
No, I don't go anywhere anymore. Okay, look,
true.
to without
Canadian
the whole,
government, give this man a passport. Come on, what the fuck? Let him go places. God.
I will go places so that people can accost me at conventions one day.
In parking lots.
Nah, well,
And I'll be there with the World Star camera, don't worry.
No, it'll probably be in the hallway where a lot of dumb shit happens, because that's where a lot of those fucking things are taken. That or a
That's true.
hotel room. Huh. God damn.
Yeah.
You would think they'd be caught in parking lots doing some shit, but nope, it's always where people can catch them. It's because they want to be seen.
Yes,
Seriously,
that is
though,
true.
I understand that we're both arguing from our own biases and stuff like that. If you want my real, more logic, rational shit, I don't really care about the post-TF stuff because that's just not my prerogative. And I think it's fine when people want to look for it, but I just don't appreciate the people that feel like something is always lacking if it doesn't have it. That shows just like a lack of theory of mind, where I think that people are just disappointed when something isn't for them, and not everything is made for you, whatever it is you're looking for. Which is why I don't get super upset about poof TFs, and why I don't really roll my eyes when it's just like, oh, it's a post TF story. I'm just kind of like, okay, fine. The assertion that it is necessary, which some people seem to imply, is what has bothered me. And also, again, it's just kind of like a narrow thing, and just like, okay, whatever. I can show a lot of people and explain a few things about this, and it's really cool, but I like being able to communicate with my art too. As selfish as it is, I am selfishly using my time and skills to show somebody something, to make something happen. And I like that it can be done without a whole lot of world building or a whole lot of pages.
Yeah.
That's it.
And I think that's entirely valid, and I respect that. And I frankly engage with that a lot myself too, with the art that I create too. So obviously I think that's a perfectly chill and honestly sometimes good way to fucking engage with it. I just think post-TF, can get into some other stuff, and I think that's cool too. That's it.
I totally understand. Sometimes I do wonder what happens after, but I don't mind the question either. Know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't mind that question. Oh shit, man, your life after that must be like, ooh, that must be some shit, or ooh, that must be fun, or like, wow, I can't believe that's how it turned out. It all has its place, and I know it does. I know when I want to have fun, and I know when I want to have a good story, and sometimes those two things don't need to be coexisting, but both can be kind of shitty and flat. Yeah.
No, and I think that's fair. But can we agree on one thing?
What?
An interesting post-TF to explore would be me turning into Shadow the Hedgehog. I think that would merit at least 40 chapters. What do you think?
I don't know how the fuck that would work, because the whole character transformation thing is still really weird to me. I find appeal in it because, it was fun to act like Knuckles when I had the avatar on, and I like the idea of role-playing. I think lots of people like role-playing without knowing that's what it is.
Yes.
It's just like I want to be turned into the character. Leaves me with the questions of, how do you want that to work as part of your identity? Are you? If you turned into Shadow, it'll be like, well, do I have to make friends with Shadow? Do I have to make you with just the ability of Shadow, the existence of being what is the shell that makes shadow, see, that's an intellectual exercise, but
it is. I mean, I would argue that at least in the way that I like character TF a lot of the time, its central draw is you're becoming the form of the character. Other people are going to refer to you as such in that way. There will be some, basic sort of traits or habits or shifts in like mood or personality or whatever that do happen, but you also are still fundamentally to some degree yourself as well. And it's how do you navigate having like new memories or whatever that are being combined with old ones, or like navigating how like everyone have these expectations as to how you should be, whereas like that's not quite you. You've still got a little bit of that in you, but you're also your own person. It's that mushy middle, and when it comes to character TF, that I find interesting, and I think that's why I would make a good shadow. So.
You know what I think? Kind of goes with that sort of theme. If you want to explore how you meld personalities together and are someone else completely while knowing the other person that is supposed to be you is still there. Some of the better written Batman stories. Because the idea of Batman being somebody who is trying to be is trying to transcend being just some guy in order to try to make big change. That's kind of like, where does Bruce Wayne end and Batman begin? Or is Bruce Wayne now the alternate identity? Is he always Batman? What is Batman? Who is Batman? Where's the little kid that's hurting inside? Shit like that. So, when you're saying something like kind of mixing those things together, I think of like some of the better written Batman stories, where he's trying to grapple with like what he is, like who he's become as a result of this, and what he's trying to do, and all that kind of stuff. So if you're gonna turn into Shadow, I hope you don't go on the Apocalypse arc first.
Yes.
And then like, I don't know, could figure that kind of shit out. So the governments will probably be happy with you if you decide to work with that. Or there's a more fun thing that I am abstaining from saying that I think you'll love, but you'll have to watch Sonic Prime.
Duly noted. I am currently doing that, so.
Yeah, don't worry. You'll get to see like all the different transformations of all the characters from all the other realities.
I can't wait to see the Pirate Knuckles transformation.
Yeah, it's exactly like Knuckles with just a pirate voice. There's nothing different about him.
I personally prefer the character transformation of Knuckles, or however they say it in the show. Knuckles, yeah.
Knuckles.
That's my favorite Knuckles transformation.
That was a great arc for him. I love it.
It really was. It's really good. We have some audience questions. I wanted to make sure we didn't forget them.
Okay.
So we'll go through them. The first question that we have is from Leaf Wine. And the question is, what would TF us back in time for the next episode?
What would TF... Okay, so assuming what we change every single time we got to record?
Yes.
Damn, man. I think just the sheer urgency that I can't go outside. I have to... Yeah. Actually, wait, no. In time for the next episode... Sorry, I just answered the question in reverse. I would like to think that in order to really bring my authentic self to this, I'd have to really, you have to, dress for the job you want. So I have to be the creature that I want to be in order to, spit that shit.
I think that would be my answer too, honestly. I didn't fully understand the question the first time I read it, and then you said that, and I was like, oh, now I understand it. So yeah, I would say that. Because I was like, what do you mean TF me back in time? I don't... What's the... Anyways,
just like, hey, it's about time, and my gums are itching. It's, well, you gotta do this now. Which means that the recording at Cha Time was kind of fucking awkward.
Yes, it was, but it's okay. The next question I have is from Figerfire, and Figerfire asks, let's say you can TF, but it requires a specific article of clothing. What article of clothing would you want to require for that process?
Oh man, I think it's always going to be a cloak. I'm a sucker for that shit.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's always fun. Just like the whole selkie thing, but not necessarily slipping into an outfit. It could be really visually interesting, like, it starts clinging to the body and not letting go and shifting the shape, and anything that it doesn't cover gets changed to match and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, shit like that for me. If I guess, but it could be anything like really simple. I guess the cloak would be fun just because
Mm-hmm.
it also means it wouldn't be at risk of like falling off or snapping or some shit. But
Yeah.
I'm sure a lot of people would want the necklace to snap so that you can't change back, or something.
Oh. Yeah. No.
Or or just keep in mind, if you needed to wear the necklace in order for it to change you and it breaks, you might just end up changing back, and then oh boy, disappointment.
That's true. That is also true. I think. I mean, like skin tight suit. Wow, skin tight suit. Definitely one of those things I agree with. Very much on board with that. I do like that idea. In particular, like, to show my ass. When it comes to like a pool toy TF or even like a mannequin TF, if you're wearing like one of those like Speedo types and that like merges into you to like cause the change, that's always cool. But I think one of the other things I'll mention, because I've been getting back more into them lately, I really like the idea of like hats triggering like changes, but like in particular like baseball caps. And one of the interesting things I kind of think about, because now I've now done this once or twice with my own hats, like if you were wearing it or something and you do the like Ash Ketchum thing of like turning him backwards and that like causes your change, I think that's kind of cool, especially because as you've seen, if I wear my hair in a certain way, I can give the illusion of having a completely different hairstyle and therefore a completely different kind of vibe to myself if I, play my cards right. And I think that's kind of cool, and that requires a backwards hat. So I like that idea of like, oh yeah, I've turned it backwards and now we're going to start the real changes,
Yeah, that's the I mean business sort of thing. But if you want to put on a
Yes.
skin tight suit, you put on a K suit. It'll do what you need it
Oh
to.
yeah. Oh, absolutely. I'd be very down for that.
Get one now.
No. The last question I have is from Other Side, and Other Side asks, do you have any favorite original soundtracks at the moment, be it music from media, like video games, film series, whatever? And what are they, if you have any favorites at the moment?
Favorites at the moment, man. I still can't get over the Metal Gear Rising soundtrack ever since that shit came out. It's so good. Frontiers does have an excellent soundtrack. There's a lot of departures from what makes a Sonic song in that game,
Mm-hmm.
but there's practically no bad music. Any music that I don't really like is just music that I don't care for. But there's no bad music. Like,
Yeah.
Tails theme from Sonic Adventure 2. If you like that song, I'm sorry, you like a bad song.
I mean, no argument from me, honestly.
There are a lot of soundtracks I enjoy. Here, I'll give you a very obscure one. Sayonara Wild Hearts. Beautiful soundtrack. It's a very short game. It's visually stunning. It's very touching. It's abstract, but it doesn't go over your head really, unless I guess you lack empathy completely. just yeah. Sayonara Wild Hearts. I could go on with like a few other soundtracks, but yeah, those are three that I can name off the top of my head.
Fuck yeah. I think my favorite OST is probably the soundtrack for Interstellar, the Christopher Nolan movie. I come back to that one a lot. It is like my go-to soundtrack, so to speak. I'm very much a fan as well of the soundtrack for Gone Girl and for Arrival. Those soundtracks in particular, from a movie perspective, are really fucking good. From a game perspective, I mean, big surprise. I'm a big Ratchet and Clank fan. I really like Rift Apart's OST. I think it was very well done and very cinematic, and I'm glad that Mark, I can't say his last name, came back to do one for Ratchet and Clank. Mark M. He used to do the ones for the Jack and Daxter games, so I think that was very much something that was felt throughout. Obviously, I like the Mass Effect soundtrack too. If I had to pick something a bit more obscure in terms of soundtrack, I mean, I don't know how obscure Fire Emblem, an older game, is, but Fire Emblem Shadows of Valentia, in my opinion, has some of the all-time bangers from a soundtrack perspective from the Fire Emblem games, and it didn't get the like uptick in like audience that it deserved because it was made right at the end of the 3DS's life cycle, so a lot of people just didn't end up fucking playing it. But as a remake of Gaiden, it's fucking amazing, and the music is just fucking incredible. So and fun fact, it changed the series entirely because it introduced the fucking turn wheel, time wheel, whatever you want to fucking call it, that's now in all the other Fire Emblem games. So anyways, great game, but importantly, the soundtrack is a fucking banger.
All right. I would like to throw in two more mentions. One for the like one very contentious one for DMC Devil May Cry. Yes, that one with the Dante that nobody likes, that I think is the best Dante, that is the best Devil May Cry game. Nobody is really gonna like leave a paragraph about it, but fuck it, if just in case somebody feels like it, yeah, that is the best one. Sorry, I have played all the games. It's the best one. That game has an amazing soundtrack. It is really fucking good. Everything has like an identity. Every single time I hear a song, I can think of moments from the game that it's tied to. I think the character themes are really fucking cool. And there's like more variety across the music that I can think of than I would have imagined. It's such a beautifully produced game. It really is. I feel so bad that we're never going to get a conclusion to the fucking sequel. Sorry, conclusion in the form of a sequel.
Yeah.
We're never going to get that. And that would have been a very nice what happens after, because I'd love to know. Fucking assholes. But more obscure, Tenchi Forever. Tenchi Forever has a very distinct sound to the whole movie that makes it unlike any other entries in the series. For anybody that's watched Tenchi, it's got a very like effervescent sort of thing, and there is like a soft warmth to it here and there. But that one like really departs, like with the instruments that they use and the tone that they go for. There isn't a lot of like peppy action or like battle sequences. There's a lot of like uneasy tension in some of the music while also being strangely soothing, and it seems kind of dreamy, which is very much the point if you know anything about that movie. So yes, DMC Devil May Cry soundtrack and Tenchi Forever.
Fuck yeah. Well, that was all the questions I had. Closing thoughts, comments, concerns.
Closing thoughts are, if people want to argue with me about like post TF being better, like sincerely, like if you're sincerely hardliner about that, get the fuck out of here. It's better. Like fuck you. It's an element. You can like the element, but don't tell me it's better. Because like why the fuck would you even bother with like anything? I don't know. It's just a weird thing to say to me. I'm fine with it. I'm generally fine with it. And the only thing I'm really annoyed by is that all the points that Zil kept bringing up to try to make me concede are not included in that fucking label. Like, ever.
They are.
Yo,
hey,
you're
hey,
the
Libra.
only one.
Hey, Libra. Post
What?
TF is better.
You know what's a great post TF story?
What?
Berserk. But nobody talks about it that way, do they?
Maybe they should. Maybe they should. Maybe they should.
Maybe they should.
Maybe they should.
Get cultured, you Philistines.
Oh, God.
Hey, did you like our debate night? Did you enjoy us yelling at each other? I sure hope so.
If you like us yelling at each other, please mention it in the comments below and tell us about how you'd like us to scream at each other some more. For your entertainment, are you not entertained?
I'm entertained too.
Good.
Besides, it's like I could get into a fight with the whole cheesecake thing anytime, but that's not about transformation. Although it does turn us into weird guys just yelling at each other about cheesecake.
We start screaming about cheesecake, and it's like, what the fuck is happening here?
Yeah, we take over an entire table of like 15 people doing that shit.
Yeah, we do, and I don't fucking regret it because I will fucking fight to the death.
Don't worry, I'll give you good cheesecake. You're lactose intolerant, and you suffer that shit. When you could be spending those points on something better, and that's okay.
Listen, I don't want to because it's fucking great, and I think it's better. And I just burped halfway through that sentence. So, anyways, whatever. You understand?
It's definitely great or something.
Great enough that I'm gonna fucking bark. Oh God! All right.
So how about this? Keep an open mind. Eat good cheesecake, and just fucking be okay. I guess I don't know.
Yeah, and remember that you're not alone in this abyssal darkness in which post TF is better. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah. Last words. Last words.